My name is Winona Hale. I'm 33 years old, and I solve problems for a living. I'm a senior systems engineer in Denver. When something breaks, I don't scream or slam keyboards. I trace the failure point. I isolate the bug. I apply a fix. That's the rhythm of my life. Input, output, cause, effect. I just never imagined the failure point would be my boyfriend casually telling me I was replaceable while I paid our bills. It was a Friday night. Our tiny dining table was covered in grown-up chaos. Bank statements, a half-eaten takeout container, my laptop humming. The glow of the screen turned our apartment into this little blue cave. Tristan came in from his shift at the flower shop, still wearing his Bloom Theory apron. There were petals stuck to the front, soft pinks and whites clinging to black fabric. He always looked a little magical in that apron, like he'd stepped out of some romantic indie film. He dropped his keys in the bowl, kissed the top of my head without really looking, and went straight to his phone. Rent came out. Utilities too, I said, more to the spreadsheet than to him. Just checking the savings and then we're good. Mm-hmm, he replied, thumbs already moving, eyes glued to whatever curated world he was scrolling. I clicked into our shared savings account, expecting the same comforting number I'd watched grow slowly for the past 2 years. Emergency fund. Maybe someday house fund. Future that felt secure fund. Instead, I saw a different number. Smaller, so much smaller. I blinked, thinking I'd misread it. Then I scrolled down, following the transaction history. My chest went cold. $19,000. Gone. Tristan? My voice sounded wrong in my own ears, a little thin. Did you move money out of savings? He didn't look up. Yeah, I reinvested it. I stared at the screen. You, what? He finally glanced over, like I'd interrupted a mildly interesting meme. Into the shop, Win. It's our future, you know that. My brain tried to behave like it was at work. Identify the problem, categorize it, define the scope. Instead, all I could feel was this hollow drop in my stomach. $19,000 is not a rounding error, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. You didn't think we should talk about that first? Tristan sighed, the long, put-upon kind. Do you have to treat everything like a corporate audit? Because this is our money, I replied, our safety net. This affects both of us. He slid his phone into his apron pocket and leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. Petals fell to the floor as he moved. I'm building something real here, he said. You, of all people, should understand investment. Risk. Growth. That's how your boring tech world works, right? Investment is planned, I said quietly, not disappearing money I find by accident. His eyes hardened, something sharp flickering there. He tilted his head, looked at me like I was a line item instead of a person. You know what? He said, almost lazily. You're replaceable, Winona. Women like you are everywhere. Silence hit harder than any shout. I actually laughed. This tiny, disbelieving sound that didn't feel like it belonged to me. Excuse me? You heard me, he continued, pushing off the counter. You think you're the only one who can pay bills on time and color code a budget? Please. There are a million career women who'd be thrilled to be with a guy building something beautiful instead of clocking into some soulless company. He grabbed his keys again, plucked them from the bowl without looking. The same keys he'd just dropped. Where are you going? I asked. Marcy's hosting a content night, he said. We're shooting a new series for my brand. I told you. He hadn't. He laughed, a low dismissive sound, and headed for the door. As he walked out, more petals shook loose from his apron, fluttering onto the hardwood like confetti after a party I hadn't known I was invited to. The door clicked shut. I was alone with the blue light of my laptop and a bank statement that felt like evidence in a crime. I stared at the screen. $19,000. 2 years ago, when Tristan first told me about his dream for Bloom Theory, I believed in him. He had this way of talking about flowers like they were stories you could hold. He saw arrangements the way I saw systems. Patterns, connections, hidden architecture. So I helped, quietly, automatically. Rent top-ups on months when the shop was just a little slow. Utilities just this time when his business account was tight. Supply deliveries I put on my card because the wholesaler's terms were stricter than he'd expected. Ad campaigns for targeted bridal demographics that would totally pay off soon. I never made a spreadsheet or ran a tally. We were building a future together, right? I was the stable one. He was the visionary. It made sense for me to be the safety net while he got the business off the ground. Except apparently I was just infrastructure. Replaceable infrastructure. The next morning was Saturday. I woke up feeling like my skin didn't quite fit. Tristan was already up, his side of the bed cold. "I'll come help at the shop," I heard myself say over coffee, like my mouth was on autopilot. "You've got that big week coming up with weddings, right?" He blinked, surprised, maybe even guilty. Then he covered it with a bright smile. "Sure, yeah, that'd be great." Bloom Theory looked as gorgeous as always from the front. Soft light, artful chaos, everything styled like a Pinterest board come to life. Brides loved it. Instagram loved it. The back room told the truth. "I'll organize the storage," I said. "You stay out front. I'll make sense of the chaos." He kissed my cheek lightly. "You're the best," he murmured, already turning away to adjust a display and snap a photo. I shut the back door behind me and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Boxes were stacked like unstable towers. Paperwork spilled from a broken crate. Buckets that should have been full of flowers were empty or holding a few limp stems. I started sorting. That's what I do. I put things into order. I gathered loose papers into piles. Invoices, receipts, contracts. My fingers moved faster as my eyes started to understand what I was seeing. $8,000 for a brand identity refresh and social media content shoots. Professional photographers following Tristan around the shop for lifestyle shots. $4,000 for personal growth and business leadership workshops. Another $3,000 across networking experiences and influencer collaboration fees. Underneath those crisp, glossy invoices, buried at the bottom like a secret, were the ones that actually kept a business alive. Wholesaler bills, stamped overdue in angry red. Notice from Mrs. Patel, 2 months' rent outstanding. Warning letters, payment reminders, final notices. I went to the coolers in the back. They were half empty. The roses that should have been there for Monday's orders weren't. The peonies Tristan had promised a bride, no sign of them. The shop was running on fumes and borrowed light. That night, I lay on our couch, the living room dark except for my phone screen. I opened Instagram, an app I usually treated like background noise. Tristan had completely rebranded. The shop's page was now secondary. His personal profile was the main event. Tristan Bloom, lifestyle and floral artistry for women who deserve more. The feed was full of professional shots. Tristan in expensive outfits, holding bouquets like accessories, laughing into the distance. Captions about breaking free from limitations, investing in yourself, never letting anyone else define your worth. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments, people thanking him for inspiration, for giving them permission to live boldly. I stared at the screen, the irony digging in like a knife. He had used our savings, our safety net, to build a persona that insisted women should stop letting others use them. Very funny. My hands were steady, which felt wrong. I opened the Notes app on my phone and created a new file. Project Wilt. If I was truly replaceable, I wanted to test the theory. Not out of revenge, out of curiosity, out of the same cold, precise part of me that loves diagnostics. I typed, establish baseline, remove variable, observe results. Then, underneath, I added, Step 1, stop watering. Step 2, document everything. I stared at those lines for a long time. Here's what I didn't know yet, what I would only discover once I started pulling those threads. Tristan hadn't just spent our savings on his image. He had been using me as collateral in ways I hadn't even begun to understand. He hadn't just decided I was replaceable. To him, I had never been a person at all. I was an access point, and I was about to unplug. Monday morning, Denver was doing that late winter impersonation of spring, bright sun, biting wind. I put on my most neutral blazer, the one I wear when I need to sound like I know exactly what I'm doing, even if my stomach is a knot. On my way to the office, I got off the bus 2 stops early and walked to a small brick building with peeling white trim, Mrs. Patel's property management office. I'd been here once before, when Tristan first signed his lease, back when guarantor felt like a romantic gesture, not a noose. Inside, it smelled like chai and old paper. File cabinets lined the walls. A calendar with a faded waterfall hung behind the desk. Mrs. Patel herself sat there, glasses low on her nose, pen in hand. She looked up as the door chimed. "Ms. Hale," she said, recognizing me faster than I expected. "You're Tristan's partner, yes?" "Yeah," I said. "Can we talk about his lease?" Her eyes sharpened. She motioned to the chair across from her. "Of course. Sit." I did. My palms were damp, but my voice came out steady. "I need to withdraw as guarantor on Bloom Theory's lease." She didn't gasp. She didn't scold. She just nodded once, slowly, like this was a train that had been visible on the horizon for a long time. "May I ask why?" she said. He used money from our shared savings without telling me, I replied. No need for theatrics. I can't keep backing something I have no control over. I'm not involved in the business. I'm just underwriting his denial. Her gaze softened for a flicker of a second. Then it went back to business. All right, I will prepare the paperwork. She turned to her computer, fingers moving quick and efficient over the keyboard. Once processed, he will have 30 days to provide a new guarantor or 2 months' rent upfront as security. If he cannot, the lease will be terminated. That seems fair, I said. Mrs. Patel paused, looking at me over the top of her glasses. You are not the first person to sit in that chair with this kind of story, she said quietly. You will not be the last. You are not a bank, Ms. Hale. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I've been acting like one. Banks charge interest, she replied. You have been charging yourself. I almost laughed. Instead, I thanked her, signed what she printed, and stepped back out into the sharp sunlight. On the bus to work, I opened my notes app and added, lease guarantor removed, countdown started. System no longer stabilized by external support. Next, utilities. At my office, I logged into every account I'd temporarily attached myself to. The electric company, the water provider, internet, insurance. Half the accounts for Bloom Theory had my name somewhere in their metadata. I made calls at my desk during breaks, my voice polite and firm. No, I'm not responsible for this business anymore. Yes, please remove my name from the account. Yes, I understand service may be interrupted if the business owner doesn't update payment details. For the suppliers I'd extended my personal credit to, I drafted careful emails. Dear vendor, as of today, I'm no longer able to provide personal coverage for Bloom Theory's invoices. Any future orders or payment arrangements will need to be handled directly with Tristan last name as the business owner. I read the sentences twice before sending. They felt cold. They also felt honest. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't call to smear his name or beg them to tighten terms. I just pulled myself out of the foundation and left the structure to stand or fall on what it actually was. Step 1. Stop watering. Tristan didn't notice immediately. For the first few days, he was too busy writing his own narrative. On Tuesday, while I was eating lunch at my desk, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. A new post of his sat at the top of my feed. Tristan leaning against the front door of Bloom Theory, arms crossed, jaw set. The caption, sometimes you have to cut dead weight to grow stronger. The likes were rolling in. So were the comments. Yes, King, protect your energy. People who don't support your vision don't deserve you. Out with the old, in with the bold. I stared at my phone, the taste of my sandwich turning to cardboard. Dead weight. That was me, the woman who had quietly kept his lights on for 2 years. I locked my phone, placed it face down, and finished my lunch in silence. Wednesday afternoon, the first crack appeared. I was in the living room that evening, half watching some documentary with the sound low, when Tristan's voice drifted in from the bedroom. Different register than usual. Tight. Wait, what do you mean on hold? He said. A pause. No, I have a wedding Saturday. I need that order. I muted the TV. Yes, I know I'm behind, but 6 weeks? It's only been 6 weeks. Another pause. The volume of his voice went up. This is ridiculous. I've been loyal for 2 years. You can't just... Silence, then a flat, angry laugh. Fine. I'll figure something else out. He came out of the room a moment later, face flushed. When he saw me on the couch, his expression flickered, defensive for a second. Everything okay? I asked. Just wholesalers being dramatic, he said, grabbing his laptop. They're putting my account on hold till I pay some stupid balance. It's all cash flow timing. They know that. Did you miss payments? I asked. He rolled his eyes. You sound like a collections agent. Then, as if flipping a switch, he put on a breezy smile and opened his laptop. It's fine. I'll hit a few retail places tomorrow. Brides don't know the difference. They might not, but his margins would. Thursday, he was out before sunrise, driving around the city chasing flowers at retail prices to fulfill a wedding that should have made him $2,000. He came home that night exhausted, shoulders slumped, muttering about greedy suppliers and small businesses under attack. That night, he posted an Instagram story. I watched from the hallway as he recorded it, standing in our kitchen, ring light reflecting in his eyes. Supply chain issues are hitting small businesses hard right now, he said earnestly to the camera. If you love a local brand, this is the time to show it. We're all just trying to survive. The responses poured in. Heart emojis, messages about how inspiring he was, how resilient, how the universe was just testing him. No one knew he was the one who hadn't paid his bills. Friday was worse. His cousin Marcy, the influencer with 60,000 followers and a curated life built on morning routines and sponsored candles, posted a big collaboration reel. Soft music, slow motion shots of Tristan arranging wedding flowers, voiceover about working with family who share your passion. She tagged Bloom Theory. Within an hour, the comments shifted. Compliments were buried under complaints. I emailed 3 times about my order. No response. Bloom Theory cashed my deposit, then canceled my delivery. Is this business even operating? I'm still waiting on a refund from last month. I watched Tristan sit on the couch, eyes glued to his screen, hands flying as he deleted comments, blocked users, wrote defensive replies about being a tiny team, and doing his best. Marcy eventually deleted the reel entirely. No explanation. Saturday morning, there was a knock at our apartment door. I was at the counter, making coffee. Tristan froze in the hallway, tension written all over him. I opened the door. Mrs. Patel stood there, a folder in her hand, expression polite but unmovable. "Good morning, Ms. Hale," she said. "Is Tristan home?" "He is," I said. "Come in." Tristan appeared behind me, bare feet, sleep shirt, tired eyes. "Mrs. Patel," he said, fake warmth coating his voice. "Hey, what brings you?" "Your lease," she said, stepping inside. "We need to discuss it." We all moved to the living room. I leaned against the doorway, coffee mug warm in my hand, heart pounding, but face neutral. "As of Monday," Mrs. Patel said, opening her folder, "Ms. Hale has withdrawn as guarantor on your commercial lease." Tristan's head snapped toward me. "You what?" I met his eyes. "I told you, I'm not funding the shop anymore." He scoffed, turning back to Mrs. Patel. There must be some mistake. She can't just..." "She can," Mrs. Patel said calmly, "and she has. Without a guarantor, you will need to provide 2 months' rent as additional security or secure a new guarantor by next Friday. If not, the lease will be terminated." Tristan laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Next Friday? That's insane. No one else gets treated like this." "This is standard policy," Mrs. Patel replied. "Your account is already in arrears. The additional security is to protect the property owner." "There must be another option," he insisted, leaning forward, voice pitching higher. "We've been good tenants. I bring you traffic. People talk about your building because of my shop." Mrs. Patel's expression didn't change. "Your reputation is not the issue. Payment is." The words landed heavier than they should have. After she left, closing the door gently behind her, Tristan rounded on me. "You couldn't give me a heads up?" he demanded. "You couldn't even talk to me before you did that?" "I did talk to you," I said quietly. "I talked to you when I found out you pulled $19,000 out of our savings without asking. You made it very clear how replaceable I was." His face twisted. "So this is punishment." "This is me stepping out," I replied. "I'm done being the invisible guarantor for a business I don't control. I'm not interested in continuing to prop up something that's bleeding out while you post motivational quotes." "That's the same thing," he shot back. "You know it is. You're letting everything fall apart just to prove a point." "No," I said. "I'm just not holding it together for you anymore." For a moment, something like fear flickered across his face, quickly smothered by anger. "You are unbelievable," he muttered. "I thought you were on my side." "I was," I said, "for 2 years. I was so on your side I forgot I had one." He grabbed his coat and stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. The apartment shook, then it went still. I stood there in the quiet, coffee cooling in my hand, my heart beating loud in my ears. It felt like the moment in a system test when you finally pull the faulty component and wait to see what else fails. Later that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I opened my notes app again. Guarantor removed. Utilities reverted. Supplier credit ended. Subject experiencing increased external pressure. I hesitated, then added one more line. He still hasn't realized how far he's dragged my professional life into this. I didn't know exactly what that meant yet, not in full, but I would, soon. Monday morning started normally, at least for the first hour. I was at my desk, sipping coffee, scanning emails, pretending life was still a neat grid of tasks and solutions instead of the slow-motion collapse I had set into motion. At 9:17 a.m., my coworker Eric stopped beside my cubicle, holding his coffee like a peace offering. Eric works in procurement. Calm, reliable, the kind of guy who triple checks vendor paperwork just because it helps him sleep at night. He raised an eyebrow. "Hey, Winona, got a weird question for you." I clicked out of a code window. "Okay?" He angled his monitor toward me. What I saw made my stomach drop straight through the floor. A polished vendor proposal. Company logo used perfectly. Fonts and formatting identical to our internal brand guidelines. And the header, Bloom Theory. Preferred floral partner for corporate engagements, leveraging exclusive insider connections. It felt like ice water hit my veins. What is this? I asked slowly. That's what I was hoping you could tell me. He pointed at the screen. This came through vendor submissions last night. It was flagged by our compliance filter. I leaned in, scanning. There were references to specific events, retirement parties, executive dinners, even an upcoming client summit, all listed with dates and brief descriptions, dates that had only ever appeared in my shared work calendar. The shared calendar I'd given Tristan access to last year when he kept scheduling pop-up events, and I needed him to know when I was unavailable. He had used it, used me, without asking, without even mentioning it. Eric cleared his throat, uncomfortable. It also claims Bloom Theory has established relationships with key internal decision makers. His voice dropped. That means you, right? Because I don't know anyone else here who knows him. My voice faltered. I swallowed. I didn't authorize any of this. I had no idea he was submitting proposals. He never even told me. Eric let out a low exhale of relief. I thought so, but, compliance is about to reach out. I just wanted you to be aware first. My heartbeat was a drum inside my ribs. Thank you, really. After he left, I stared at the screen, the words swimming, tightening, accusing. Tristan hadn't just drained our savings. He hadn't just used me financially. He had used my job, my access, my credibility. If corporate had approved that proposal, it would have meant conflict of interest inquiries, ethics violations, possibly even a black mark on my record. All because he wanted Bloom Theory to look more legitimate, because he treated my professional life as an accessory. I opened a new email. My hands were absolutely steady. That scared me a little. 2. Ethics and compliance. Subject: unauthorized use of corporate information. I kept it factual, clinical, like documenting a bug ticket. The attached vendor proposal includes internal scheduling details taken from my personal work calendar and references insider connections that I did not authorize or endorse. I did not participate in, approve, or have prior knowledge of the submission. The vendor used my access without permission. I hit send. The response came within the hour. Proposal rejected. Misrepresentation of vendor status and unauthorized use of corporate materials. A clean strike-through on any future attempt. I sat back in my chair, numb. My phone buzzed. Text from Tristan. Dinner tonight? I'm thinking sushi. My treat, baby. The audacity made my mouth go dry. He had no clue, absolutely none, how close he had dragged me to workplace catastrophe. But he would feel the consequences soon enough, and I wasn't going to shield him from them. That evening, after work, I came home to a strangely cheerful Tristan humming in the kitchen as he cut vegetables for dinner. Like he hadn't screamed at suppliers that morning. Like his shop wasn't a house of overdue invoices and wilting flowers. Long day? He asked casually. Yeah, I said, removing my coat. Interesting one. He didn't notice my tone, or he pretended not to. The next morning, things began unraveling publicly. Someone, likely from procurement, posted a vague warning in a local small business Facebook group. PSA: be cautious of vendors misrepresenting corporate connections to obtain preferential terms. Seeing this more often lately. No names. But then someone asked, which vendor? And someone else, a supplier, recognized the hints and replied with a screenshot. Bloom Theory. Unpaid invoice. 6 weeks overdue. Balance: $2,450. Status: delinquent. With a caption: they promise corporate contracts, never paid. The dominoes fell instantly. Florists, photographers, caterers, venues, event planners, wholesale suppliers. One by one, they added comments, receipts, screenshots, stories, screenshots of bounced checks, emails where Tristan promised payment Friday, 8 weeks in a row, texts where he name-dropped my company to secure better terms. By lunchtime, the post had more than 300 comments. By dinner, it had over 700. The title at the top of the thread was brutal. Bloom Theory, pretty pictures, unpaid bills. I sat at the dining table reading it all while Tristan spiraled around the apartment like a trapped wasp, alternating between rage and panic. They're lying, he snarled at one point. They're all jealous because I'm growing faster than they are. I looked up from my phone, exhaustion settling deep in my bones. Are they lying about the unpaid invoices? He glared at me, You're seriously taking their side? I'm reading screenshots, I said. Hard to argue with timestamps. He pointed at me, shaking. This is because you pulled out your support. You did this. No, I said quietly. You did this when you treated my help as entitlement instead of partnership. He made a choking sound. Anger? Disbelief? Then stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door. I stayed at the table, scrolling through the carnage. At some point, I realized my chest didn't hurt. I wasn't panicking, I wasn't crying, I wasn't even angry. I was clear. For the first time in months, the emotional fog had lifted, leaving only truth behind. Tristan had built a business on aesthetics and borrowed bravery. I had been the scaffolding. Now that scaffolding was gone. And the structure was finally revealing what it always was, a beautiful facade with no load-bearing walls. Before bed, I updated my note. Subject's public credibility rapidly deteriorating. External systems rejecting false narratives. Emotional manipulation attempts increasing. Then I added one more line. He hasn't hit rock bottom yet, but he's falling. By Sunday morning, Denver's small business community had fully turned. The Facebook thread wasn't just a thread anymore, it was a wildfire. Screenshots spread to Instagram stories, then into wedding planning groups, then on to Reddit. The reputation Tristan curated so obsessively was unraveling faster than he could delete comments. Everywhere he looked online, someone was naming what he'd tried so hard to hide. But the real breaking point wasn't digital. It was painfully, humiliatingly real. The Denver Bridal Expo. I didn't go. I didn't have to. I received a blow-by-blow via text from Eric's fiancée, Elise, a wedding photographer who spent her weekend at those vendor expos. She knew Tristan in passing from past events and recognized his new Bloom Theory Reborn banner instantly. Elise, 2:08 p.m. Winona. He's here. He has a whole new setup. Elise, 2:14 p.m. He keeps pitching himself as the most talked about florist in Denver. Not in the way he thinks. Elise, 2:36 p.m. Oh, God. Finance coordinator just walked to his booth with a tablet. I sat on the couch, pulse rising. Elise, 2:37 p.m. His payment for the booth bounced. Elise, 2:38 p.m. Bounced, loudly, in public. Elise, 2:39 p.m. They're asking him to pay now or leave. I closed my eyes. Elise, 2:41 p.m. Winona. People are staring. Brides, vendors, everyone. He looks, shaky. Elise, 2:47 p.m. He's packing up, alone, people whispering. He looks like he might cry. I set the phone down. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired, exhausted and hollow, like whatever had been holding me together had finally dissolved. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't victory. This was collapse. And I was just watching from the outside, where I should have been all along. The next morning, on my way to work, I drove past Bloom Theory out of instinct. The windows were papered over in brown craft paper. The sign above the door was gone, only screw holes remained. A notice was taped to the glass. Property reclamation. Lease terminated. Access revoked. For a long moment, I just sat in my car, engine running. The shop that drained 2 years of my finances, my stability, my peace, it was silent now, empty. Stripped of the illusion Tristan fought so hard to protect. I should have felt angry. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt something gentler, like relief mixed with something unexpectedly sad. I whispered into the stillness, "It's finally over." But I was wrong. Not yet. Tristan moved out on Wednesday. I wasn't home when he came to pack. I was at the office, caught in back-to-back code reviews. When I returned that evening, the air inside the apartment felt wrong, hollow, half-collapsed, echoing with absence. His closet was empty, the bathroom shelf cleared, his cologne gone, his favorite mug missing from the dish rack. He'd taken the ring light and tripod he used for content shoots. He left behind piles of glossy brand materials that never made it into the world. On the kitchen counter sat a folded piece of paper, my name written neatly in his handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Winona, you were right. I did care more about being seen than seeing you. More about how my life looked than how it actually was. More about being someone online than being someone real. And I treated you like a foundation instead of a partner, like a source instead of a person. I told you you were replaceable. That was a lie. You were irreplaceable, and I threw that away. I hope you find someone who sees you, truly sees you, who doesn't confuse your stability for something they can stand on, who grows with you, not because of you. For what it's worth, I'm sorry, Tristan. I read it once, then again. My throat tightened, but didn't break. I folded the note and placed it in the drawer next to my spare chargers, where forgotten things go, where they no longer carry weight. The silence in the apartment felt different now, not hostile, not empty, just honest. Something inside me loosened, something unclenched. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. No late-night debt anxiety, no monitoring bill payments I shouldn't be responsible for, no wondering what he was spending money on. Just quiet. Clean, quiet peace. But the story wasn't done with me. Not yet. Because life has a way of offering unexpected second chapters right after you close the first. And mine was waiting just 3 blocks away. 2 weeks after Tristan's departure, I walked past Bloom Theory's old storefront, the emptiness of it still a jarring sight. The papers had been torn down, but the windows were still covered in the same brown craft paper. The old sign had been pulled off, and a small "For Lease" sign was plastered crookedly in the window. I turned the corner to get to work, but something pulled me toward the shop a few doors down, wild and rooted. It was a new flower shop. Not flashy, not full of contrived Instagram aesthetic, just honest. Like the kind of place that understood flowers had roots as well as petals. I didn't know why, but something about it felt like a safe space, something grounded. I hesitated before pushing open the door, but once I stepped inside, it felt like everything else fell away. The air smelled fresh, clean stems, the earthy scent of eucalyptus, roses, lavender. The coolers were stocked, the shop was well organized, and the atmosphere was calm but full of life. No forced energy, no fake smiles. "Hello," I called gently as I walked in. A woman emerged from the back room, wiping her hands on a dark apron. When she turned, I saw a familiar face. It was Sarah, Tristan's former assistant, the one who had handled the logistics while he focused on content creation. Her eyes widened when she saw me, but there was no awkwardness in her expression, just a nod and a warm smile. "Winona, right?" she said, her voice soft but confident. "Wow, it's been a while. I didn't expect you to stop by." "Yeah, I shifted my weight, a little nervous. "I didn't know you took over the shop." She chuckled. "Yeah, it's a long story, but it's definitely a fresh start." Her smile turned wry. "I bought out some of the remaining inventory from the old shop. Mrs. Patel gave me a good deal on the space after, well, you know." "Yeah," I said, glancing around, trying to push down the strange mix of emotions bubbling up. "This place looks amazing, really different from what I expected." She smiled again, like she was proud of something beyond just the business. "I've learned a lot about what not to do," she said, looking around at the simple yet beautifully arranged flowers. Tristan had a vision, no doubt, but I think he missed some of the most basic parts of running a business. Like, you can't build something sustainable on just aesthetics. I nodded, suddenly struck by how comfortable she seemed, how grounded. "I used to handle all the behind-the-scenes stuff while he made everything look perfect for Instagram," Sarah continued. "I was the one organizing orders, scheduling deliveries, working out the logistics with suppliers. Meanwhile, Tristan just kept dreaming up these grandiose ideas about branding, influencers, and the image he wanted to project. I kept telling him that people would notice if the actual business wasn't sustainable." She laughed lightly, shaking her head, but he didn't want to hear it, not until it all fell apart. I felt a sharp pang in my chest, sadness mixed with something I didn't expect, empathy. Sarah had been trying to hold the pieces together, while Tristan focused on everything except what actually mattered. She had seen the cracks before they became a flood. "I'm sorry about everything," I said softly, glancing at the colorful bouquets around me. "I'm sure it wasn't easy." She waved her hand dismissively. "Honestly, I'm not mad about it anymore. It's just the way things were. But I've learned that actually knowing how to run a flower business matters more than looking good on Instagram. People want quality. They want consistency. Not just a pretty face." She met my gaze. "And I don't think that's something Tristan ever got." I looked around the space again. Wild and Rooted was exactly what it claimed to be. Simple, professional, and full of integrity. It was the real thing. Sustainability, not just a buzzword. "I can see that," I said with a smile. She grinned. "I'm actually really excited about the future now. I've got a good supplier list, fair pricing, and a steady customer base. Things are already looking up." Something about that steadiness felt like a breath of fresh air. "So what about you, Winona?" Sarah asked, her voice shifting. "How are you holding up?" I hesitated. "Honestly, I'm good. I'm still adjusting, but—" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I feel like I can finally breathe again." She raised an eyebrow knowingly. "Yeah, that sounds about right." I felt a sense of peace I hadn't realized I'd been lacking. It was the simple recognition that growth doesn't come from empty promises or smoke and mirrors visions. It comes from something real, something steady. "I think I'll get a bouquet," I said finally, glancing at the coolers. "Something for myself this time." Sarah led me over to the cooler, her hands expertly pulling out a bundle of fresh, delicate flowers. She arranged them quickly, but with care, as if she was letting the flowers guide her, rather than controlling every little detail. The arrangement was stunning, wild yet structured, elegant but earthy. "These are for your new start," Sarah said, wrapping the stems. "You know, sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them fail quickly, instead of letting them drag it out. Letting someone fail fast is the only way they learn what really matters." I smiled, touched by her blunt honesty. "I think I'm learning that now," I replied. As Sarah handed me the bouquet, I paid her with a smile. "Thank you," I said. "For the flowers, for everything." She nodded, as though it were all part of the process. "You're welcome. Take care, Winona." I left Wild and Rooted with flowers in hand, beautiful, fresh, and full of life. The sun outside felt warmer, like spring was finally settling in. As I walked back to my apartment, I stopped at the corner of the street, looking at the empty storefront that had once held Tristan's dreams, the place that had consumed so much of my energy, my money, my peace. It felt like it was finally over. But this time there was no bitterness, just the quiet, simple recognition that true growth starts with roots, and that's what I was building now, not for anyone else's image, but for myself. The flowers on my kitchen table were a reminder, just the right amount of care, no more, no less. The next chapter was already starting, and for the first time, I felt completely in control. Final update. I went to the farmer's market this Saturday. The weather was warm for the first time in months, and I thought I'd walk around for a while, just to clear my head. I wasn't looking for Tristan, but there he was, working a booth with a handful of handmade candles. He saw me before I had a chance to decide whether I should avoid him. His expression shifted. He hadn't expected this. "Winona," he said quietly, taking a step out from behind the booth. I paused. The world was full of people, but it felt like we were the only ones standing there. After a long silence, I finally spoke. "You really just let it all die, didn't you?" I said, my voice steady but soft. He flinched, nodding slowly. "Yeah, I guess I did." I looked at him, but this time I didn't feel the sting. No more blaming myself. No more wishing for things to have turned out differently. "I thought it was alive," he added quietly. I smiled, a small, real smile. "It was alive, just not in the way you thought." We stood there for a moment longer, then he turned to go back to his booth. He didn't look back. I took a deep breath and walked away. It wasn't closure, it was something better. I had finally let go.